And now we are about to enter into the Facebook world. Please hold. And Zoom is preparing live streaming preview.
All right. Just let me know.
Alrighty. And we are going live in 5, 4, 3, 2. Remember that there's a delay before I hit go live.
Well, I was going to say, do you want me to start right after you go? Or should I wait a couple of seconds?
You can literally start right after I say go live.
All right.
We're live.
Hey guys, it's me, Greg, from the Kalamazoo Nature Center, and we are here for our first Young Kings, Young Queens digital creature feature. I'm pretty excited to run this with you guys today, and we're actually going to talk about some of my favorite animals here at the Nature Center. So let's jump right in and let's see who we've got, and then we'll talk about them a little bit more individually. So I'm going to flip my camera around so that you guys can see who I've got, and then we'll talk about them. So in this enclosure, we have a baby painted turtle. You can see him right there. His name is Alex. We'll talk about him in a second. And in this enclosure, I actually have two turtles. I have two box turtles. They're two female eastern box turtles. So you can see one is right here. And then the other one is actually hiding under this log. And I'll take this log out for the feature so that you guys can see. All right, and I think we're actually going to start with our box turtles. Let me make sure that my camera's not going to fall. We'll go on that side since that's where they are. Is that view okay, Takesha? Can you see both of them?
Yes.
All right. So, like I said, these are called eastern box turtles, and they are native to Michigan. They are a really special kind of turtle because they are what's called a terrestrial turtle, which means that instead of being aquatic and swimming around in the water, they actually live, they spend most of their time on the land. They're not able to swim. You can see this one is soaking herself in a little bit of the water. That's just to kind of keep herself moist. They actually can't swim. If we take a look at their feet, I can show you, instead of having webbed feet, these guys have some kind of crazy claws that it's kind of hard to see. So you can see they've got these really sharp claws, and they're actually for digging. So they like to dig holes or little burrows for them to live in, and that's kind of where they habitate. One of the things that kind of stinks about our relationship with these animals is that they are kind of misunderstood. Like I said, they're one of the only turtles that lives on land. So a lot of times people will see them and they will try to return them to ponds, or they will try to keep them as a pet, and they will try to keep them in an underwater enclosure, which just doesn't work. So I think it's really important that people recognize how they can actually help these animals. So if you ever see one on the side of the road, the best thing that you can do for it is either completely leave it alone, or you look at which way it's trying to cross that road and you just take it and you put it in the direction that it's going across the street. And what that does is that's just going to let him or her go and continue on its way. A lot of times people will put it back on the side that the turtle just came from, and more often than not, that turtle is just going to go right back into the road where it's not very safe. These guys are really dependent on like their directions, so turning them around and making them face different directions than they were already facing is really confusing for them. Turtles are not the smartest animals in the world, so it's always really important. If you ever pick one of these guys up, you always put it back down as close to where you found it or in the direction that it was going as you can. All right, and so then I am just going to put this so you guys get a little bit closer view of these guys. you can see they're a little bit confused by this clear enclosure. They think that they can get out, but they cannot. So you can see here, if we look at her eyes, you notice that her eyes are brown. That's how we can actually tell that she is a female. And actually, I can run over to our other enclosure really quick and I can show you the male because his eyes are a little bit different. That's our main identifier for them. So actually, this is the enclosure that they stay in when they're not on display, or when they are on display rather. So you can see here, our male has those red eyes and his shell's a little bit more yellow than our females. And this actually is his side of the enclosure. Give you guys a little view of that. Oops. And that is where our female turtles stay. You can see our other two are hiding right here under this little log. But let's go back to the ones that we've got all put out for us. So a lot of times I get asked, do these animals bite? They can bite, they have mouths, they need to eat, but they do not really have any interest in biting people. Most of what they eat is like vegetation. We feed them just kind of fruits and vegetables here, along with worms. A lot of times what will happen is people will take these animals in as pets and they will not feed them their proper nutrition. Actually, if we go back over to our display, this would have been a better one to show off for that. So you can see the impact of what happens when people keep these guys as pets. So you'll notice this turtle that's closer to us has a bit smaller shell than that one that's back there. You see her shell goes all the way to the ground. Her shell does not even cover up her back legs. So this turtle was actually kept as a pet by somebody, and they did not feed her the proper nutrition. We think that they actually were only feeding her like iceberg lettuce or something like that, which is basically just water and a little bit of minerals to that turtle. So she didn't get all of the stuff that she needed to properly develop. So that's why she lives with us. Yeah. All right, so I'm going to pause here because that was a lot of information. I'm going to see if you guys have any questions in the chat. So give me 1 second while I check that out, or while I figure out how to check the chat. All right, I don't think we have any questions yet, but make sure if you have any, you just type them in either I believe the Facebook chat or the Zoom chat, and they will get sent over to me. All right, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna move over to our other turtle, and I'll remove this so we can get a better view of him like I did with our other guy. And this one is also a very special animal. He is called a painted turtle. And he gets his name, actually, if you look really close, you can see they're kind of dull because he's still a baby, but he's got these little red markings all around his shell. And then on the bottom, he's also got some similar markings. I'm not going to flip him upside down because that would not be very comfortable for him. But they get their name from the fact that they look like they're painted almost. They get these really vibrant colors that just get really, really cool as they get older. But like I said, this guy is just a baby. He came to us in I want to say the fall last year, and he has not grown very much at all. He is only about the size of a quarter when he came here, and he's probably not too much bigger than that right now. Let's see if I actually can't get him a little something that we can compare. Put him in a display that we can see him a little bit better. Whoop. So there you can see he has grown some. But back then we used to be able to almost completely cover his shell up with a quarter. So you can see he's definitely gotten a little bit bigger, but he's still very, very, very little. All right, and I'm gonna put him back in his water because he really likes to swim. So like I said, these guys are aquatic. These are the ones that you see swimming around in the water. They eat aquatic insects, they eat larvae, they eat all kinds of stuff. He really doesn't like me following him around with this camera. Once again, you can see he's getting a little bit confused by our clear container. He thinks he can go through it. Oh, looks like we have a question. I'll check that out. Oh, no, none yet, just a chat. So the main difference, like I said, between these guys and our box turtles is the fact that he does live in the water. But another kind of key difference is the fact that he is not really a species of concern. So our box turtles, since they are terrestrial, They share a lot more space with us. You know, they live on the land, we live on the land. And so more often than not, if we want to put up a structure or a parking lot or buildings like that, we can be found to impact these animals. You know, whether or not that is their habitat that they live, or if it's an area where they get food and they hunt, or if it's just an area that they have to travel through that they can't now because it's a parking lot. Whereas these guys are aquatic. They live in the water. Their impact or our impact on them looks a little bit different. So, you know, this is something that would be affected by, you know, a factory that is on the river, or a parking lot that is next, that drains out into a pond or something like that. They're going to be more affected by water issues, which thankfully we don't necessarily have as many of. He's just hanging out right now. We'll see if we can't get him. Get a good view. Check the chat really quick. Yeah, so somebody asked, how long do turtles live, and does it differ with aquatic versus land? And so they do both have different lifespans. Here we'll see. Oops. They do have different lifespans. I don't know that it necessarily depends on the fact that they live in the water or not. I think it's more just the environment, or the you know, the predators that are around them. I think that these guys, these painted turtles, get to about 30 years old or so. These guys, however, are really cool. I want to say that we have documented them being upwards of 80 years old. So these guys can get really, really old. I think that both of these turtles alone are probably over 30 years old, just based on their size. So these guys can get really old, and that has a lot to do with the fact that you know, they're just really sturdy animals. Not a lot of animals, especially around here now, kind of this more urban area of Michigan, are able to eat them. Their main predators are like coyotes, big birds will sometimes eat them, and stuff like that. Versus these guys, you know, they start off a lot smaller, and so they're a lot easier to get eaten by other animals. And then they're in the water, where you know, there's just stuff that's gonna be able to get them, or you know, even boating accidents can happen where you know, a turtle will swim under a propeller. And that's just not gonna happen on the land. But you know, our terrestrial turtles do get hit by cars, stuff like that. So there's a different there's different issues for each of them, for sure. That's a really good question though, because they do have different lifespans. Let me check and see if we've got any more. Nope. So one thing that's sometimes kind of cool, and we'll see if we can't get them to do it, is to watch them eat. So I'm going to grab a turtle pellet, and we'll see if we can't get little Alex to hunt it, because that is sometimes fun to watch. All right, so we've got right here with us some baby turtle food. We have the baby turtle. Let's see if he's feeling it. Boop. Looks like he noticed it in the water. Sorry if this video is shaking. I'm going to try to get it a little more stable. So now some questions I'm going to ask you guys is, what are differences that you notice about their bodies, maybe the shape of their bodies? And you can respond to this in the chat if you'd like, or you can just think about it on your own. But I want you to look at the shape of their shells. I want you to look at their behavior, the way that they interact with the enclosure. Are they cautious? Are they curious? To me, this one seems very curious, just because he's so young. He's always swimming around the edges. He's always looking for something that he can do. Oh, looks like he might eat that pellet. Nope, maybe not. He's having a hard time. His food's almost as big as his head. Like I said, I think he seems like he's a little bit more curious. These guys are a little bit older, So I think that they're kind of a little bit more cautious. They don't really care that they're in here, but they are trying to be careful about what they're doing. If you look at their motions, they're also very deliberate. What is a healthy diet for a turtle? That is a really good question. So I can actually probably show you one of the salads that we feed these guys. All right, so Alex, like I said, he gets turtle pellets, and then he actually mostly just eats meat right now. Aquatic turtles, especially when they're really little, they eat meat a lot, and then as they get older, they kind of eat more veggies. But then these guys, this is actually one of their dishes that we feed them. So you can see they've got some green beans in there. There is a little bit of those yellow strands are squash, I believe. There's some different kinds of berries. I think we've got raspberries and blueberries. And then I think this is a little bit of beet right here. So they get a little bit of everything. And then they also each get a couple of worms. And that's kind of like their protein that they eat. Because they cannot just subsist on vegetables. They need to be able to have protein. That's like that turtle with the very small shell that I showed earlier. She did not get a proper diet. So that's why her shell looks like that, versus these guys have these really nice protective shells. The reason they're called box turtles, let's see if we can't demonstrate that. So the reason they're called box turtles, you guys are getting a little sneak peek in our animal care room, is because if you look on their shell, you'll see this line right here. It's hard to get a angle. So my finger is right on this little line on her shell, and she can actually fold that line up like a box, and she can be completely enclosed in her shell. So she is that same turtle that you guys always see in the cartoons that's pulling itself all the way into its shell. Not all turtles are actually able to do that, but box turtles can. They can completely seal themselves up in their shell as long as they were properly nutritioned. But if we go back over to Shelly, that's what we call her. It's not the nicest nickname, but that's how we can tell them apart. But if we look at Shelly, you can see that even if she wanted to, even if she pulled her head and all of her legs as close as she could to her body, her shell does not quite cover it up. So you can see that's as far into her shell as she can get with her little legs. And I'll turn around. So that is why it's really important that if you ever see one of these animals in the wild, you just leave it be, or you do your best to get it to where it looks like it's going. Because if you take it in as a pet and you don't know how to properly care for it, you can actually be doing a lot more harm than good for that animal. So it's really important, especially because those turtles are they're not endangered, but they are what's called of concern. So it means that their populations are kind of on the decline, a very slight decline, and it's mostly just due to the fact that they take kind of a while to be able to reproduce. I think it takes up to like 5 or 6 years for them to get to an age where they're able to reproduce. And then after they get to that point, they're still kind of a vulnerable animal. They're very slow. They're very easily hit by cars. So it's really important that we leave them be so that they can reproduce naturally in the wild. All right, I'm going to say that this is my last round of questions. So if anybody has any questions, let's hear them. Looks like we might have got one. Do people eat turtles? So I've heard of people eating turtle soup before. I'm not sure how common it is for people to eat turtles, but like I said, I have heard of people saying that they've made like turtle soup before. So it wouldn't surprise me if people did eat turtles. I've heard of people eating crazier stuff. Kangaroo and alligators. Oh man, you can hear them. They're trying to get out. Let's see if we can't get a nice little close up of these ladies. Yeah, like I said, these are both females. So what do you guys think about our turtles? These are both native to Michigan, so you could easily see these animals, you know, right here in Kalamazoo. I've seen both of these in different places in Kalamazoo, around neighborhoods, around green spaces. So they're very common. Looks like we got another question? Oh, awesome. I think they're pretty awesome too. All right, so that is about all I've got for you guys this week. I'm going to flip it back over to me so you guys can see my face. I'm an animal too. All right, so thank you guys so much. Oh, I don't know if I lost you guys there or not. Sorry, technical difficulties. So thank you guys so much for joining us this week. I believe next week we're going to do some possums, which are other animals you can see right in your very own backyard. And so, yeah, thanks for joining us. I hope to see you again next week. I hope you learned something, and I hope you enjoyed it. See you guys next week.